how did you get into the natural community? Like, how did you go into that world?
Okay. Well, I was actually born at home. My mom had me at home. My mom had my middle brother at home and my oldest brother in the hospital. So after my mom had my oldest brother in the hospital, um, she kind of decided that she didn't like the care that she was given at that time, because they would take the babies away, and they didn't give her as not enough time with the baby as she wanted. So I guess from there she decided she wanted to have a home birth. And so, my mom having two successful home births, I kind of grew up with the notion that, okay, I can have a home birth as well. And then the more I researched it and read the Ina May books and the stuff, I was like, okay, watch the documentaries. I'm like, okay, this seems to be like a safe route. You're only a few minutes away from the hospital. Things just kind of seem like it could be done. You're a strong woman, you can have a home birth, right? So that's kind of how that started. Now come to find out later that I was actually, uh, when my mom was having me, I was stuck for a little while as well. And, she was waiting on the midwife to come to pull me out. So I asked my mom at that time about shoulder dystocia, which is what my baby was diagnosed with. And it wasn't something that they ever mentioned or brought up. So, but I found that, like, later on, realized that actually that happened to my mom as well. So, but that's how I got into the natural, wanting to have a natural home birth, because I thought it was safe.
Since you're down in Florida, and I know there's like a lot of birth centers down there, did you look into birth centers at all, or were you just strictly going to go home birth?
Well, in order to have a home birth, you need to go through a birth center, unless you are doing it completely solo, or what is that called? The people that don't even have
The birth
midwives.
unassisted.
Yeah,
Yeah, the
unassisted
unassisted
birth.
people.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. So I mean, that wasn't in my plans at all. So my plan was to have a midwife. So there's two birthing centers in Sarasota, and I went to both of them. And the first one I went to, a friend actually had a successful home birth through. I went to them, but my meeting, I was supposed to meet with the actual, like, the owner, and I had paid like a $25 fee to have this meeting to talk to this person, and they never showed up. They were doing something else, and so I was talking to a student and another part-time student, like a real new student, and like I don't know. And I kind of felt uncomfortable about that. I'm like, well, this lady couldn't even keep her meeting with me. Um, and so I was like, yeah, I didn't feel good about it. So I went to the other one and I toured the place, and, I felt pretty comfortable for the most part. My major questions were, though, at that time, I was um, over 200 pounds when I was pregnant. So my weight, I was concerned for my weight, and also I was concerned because I had thyroid issues that were just starting to, like, I was on medication and stuff, but I was assuming that they would be taking care of that as well. And when I asked them that if they would, take care of that, if they'd be part of the medical plan of that, they said, yes, your thyroid's no problem. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. And so it's like, okay. So I signed up with them. And they have since shut down. So I'm happy about that.
So did you have a team of midwives there?
So so when I first started there, yes, they were like rotating. There's like 4 different midwives. There's the owner, which I only saw like a couple times, and then some other midwives. So we rotated through. And the midwife who ended up being the midwife that delivered my baby, I only saw her one time, like in like my second visit. So it was very, very early on. So I didn't get a chance to get to know this person at all. And she was even like not there for a while. I didn't see her. She was there, one time when I was very early on, and then she was gone, and then all of a sudden showed up all of a sudden when I was in labor to come to my birth. Um, but the other two midwives that I got to know, like I felt pretty comfortable with them. I felt like they were pretty knowledgeable and they were nice and they were, um, just got to know me and my baby and stuff like that. And I was really, when the person they told me that was on call coming to my delivery, I was really, really disappointed and I was really had a like bad gut feeling about it. I just, nothing about that situation felt right at that time. But yeah, so there was about 3 or 4 different midwives that were rotating when I was going up for my monthly appointments.
So how was your husband with all this? Was he on board with everything?
So at first, when I wanted to have a home birth, he was very like skeptical. Like, I don't know, this is, nobody does that. This is weird. And then of course we watched the Ricky Lake documentary, and we watched a few other documentaries that are like, fear mongering about C-sections and every doctor just wants to go on vacation and they'll, you can only push for a little while, you can only be in labor for a little while, and then they're automatically gonna, give you a C-section. It's basically what these documentaries are jumping and, pushing down your throat that, the C-section rates are crazy. And, maybe they are, but at the same time, there's a time and a place for a C-section. And I think, a lot of them are needed. There might be a few that maybe are rushed, but I think a majority of time a C-section is a safer option than letting somebody just, keep going and putting baby at risk. That's the thing. And they don't talk about that in the documentaries. They're not like, oh, well, baby's heart rate's going down and all these things are happening, that it's time to, take care of the baby and take care of mom. And, but oh no, it's C-section. Oh, you don't want to, you're going to cut your guts out and it's a major surgery and they're just going to, make you have this major surgery, which, is scary, especially if you're a first time mom. You're like, well, I don't want a C-section. Like, nobody wants a C-section. But, it's at the end of the day, you get your safe, healthy baby, and that's all that freaking matters. So my husband, yes. Eventually he was on board after, and at that time, I have to say, I was researching and looking, and nobody talks about the bad things that happen during birth and during a home birth. Come to find out, there's a whole community of these people, which I wasn't a part of. I wasn't in any Facebook home birth Facebook groups or any type of like Facebook groups that were, I was on Instagram or anything like that. This was something I'd already decided that I felt comfortable doing because of, my mom having 2 successful home births. So I didn't know that there was a whole community out there, like a big community that will shame you and silence you and belittle you if you try to express that tell your story that you lost a baby. And so there's not a lot of, until our stories came out, there's not a lot of information on it. And so I didn't know that it was so dangerous. I didn't know. I didn't honestly didn't think that it was. Looking back now, it's so like, but at the time there was little information on the bad things that could happen or whatever. So, or stories about it. So, so we both felt comfortable with having a birth at home. And I felt more comfortable having it in my home instead of the birthing center, just because it was, that was an option. And I'd rather just be home than at a birthing center.
And how was pregnancy going through them?
Pregnancy is pretty good. So I only gained about 30 pounds, 30-ish pounds, but still being over 200 pounds at that time, that was still quite a bit of weight that I gained. But I didn't really have any major problems besides like the edema and swelling and stuff, but everything seemed to be fine. And yeah, no major issues. My diabetes, the glucose test came back below, like perfect. And so I didn't have any issues with that.
Well, I was going to ask you, but do you answer about the diabetes? Did they do all the testing and regular prenatal and all the testing leading up to birth?
Yeah. So when I first found out I was pregnant, I went through them. They asked me if I wanted to go do like a scan to see how far along I was. And I said yes. So I went and got, they did, I went to like a separate place to go get the ultrasound to see how big the baby was and see, if it was a viable pregnancy and all that. So I did that. And I think, yeah, it came back like, I guess a normal, whatever. Wasn't ahead of time. I wasn't ahead of schedule as far as I knew at that time. So it came back like it was growing right on schedule. So, and then as far as tests, they did like in-house, I had to drink like grape juice and wait an hour, and they did the testing right there. I didn't have to go to like LabCorp or anything to do that. So they did it there. But I wonder why they use the grape. I guess the grape juice has the same amount of sugar as the other stuff. I don't really know. But they were like, oh, well, at least you don't have to drink the gross, stuff that the.
How much grape juice did you drink? Because
it was a small bottle. It was like an 8-ounce or a 10-ounce bottle, but I guess because it has like 50 grams of sugar or something, it's got quite a bit of sugar. I think my markers came back though at like 106. So it was normal range. But I don't know if at some point if I developed diabetes later, because I had a large 10-pound, 6-ounce baby. I went I think I was pretty much way overdue. Like from their records, I was like 40 weeks and 6 days. But I feel like I was even more than that. Like, how sometimes in the middle of a thing, they can change your due date. I think I was further along than that. But from the beginning scan and even the 20-week scan, everything was measuring on time. So I don't know how accurate that is too, but I had a big baby. Yeah.
Yeah, mine did some weird stuff too with the diabetes test that I found out later is not accurate like in any way. So I was like, oh, okay. I didn't know, just like you. I was like, yeah, I did it. It must be. And then, it came back fine. But yeah, some weird stuff. Same thing that I'm like, didn't hear about it till later.
When I ended up in the hospital after delivering, the neonatologists were like, oh, well, do you have diabetes? Why do you have such a big baby? Like, and then they said, well, maybe you could have developed diabetes later. But I've also had 2 other pregnancies where I haven't, developed any type of diabetes. So I don't think I have or had gestational diabetes. I just had a really big baby, and I think I was pretty overdue. And also weight had to be a huge factor also at that time, which really upset me because that was one of my like key things I expressed quite often in the meetings. And I was like, and they're like, oh, don't worry about your weight. We don't tell women how much weight they should gain. We don't tell them, we don't tell them to diet. We don't tell them to do anything. And I'm like, okay, well, yeah, but at the same time, I'm having a home birth, and I'm just, want to, it's, kind of scary too.
For funsies, I looked up how many grams of sugar is in 8 ounces of grape juice. So the GT glucose tolerance test uses 100 grams of sugar. 8 ounces of grape juice has 32, 37, depending on who you look at, grams of sugar. So you'd need to drink 3 8-ounce bottles of grape juice to get there.
So I think the one I had may have been 50 grams of sugar, because I remember there being a 50 grams of sugar. So maybe it was a 10-ounce bottle.
It might have been, but it wasn't 100.
No, it wasn't 100. It was enough,
yeah.
It was that. So
I was going to say I had the first time I did my glucose tolerance test is the only time I have ever gotten a sugar buzz off of something. It's like, there's a lot of sugar.
And I always wondered why they wouldn't, we give you the grape juice and not the gross other stuff. And I'm like, okay, well, I mean, obviously there's a reason why they give you the gross other stuff, like I don't know. So yeah, apparently if there's not the same amount of sugar, then the test was not correct. So how is that okay? How is that like legal, or how is that, that's not that's very upsetting. Like that is just blows my mind again. Like how are these people allowed to get away with this stuff? Because yeah, had I had diabetes, then I mean,
You should have been, well, you should have probably been risked down. You should have been monitored much more closely. It changes everything. You're still pregnant, you're still expecting a baby, but you need to have someone looking more closely at you for signs that are specific to the diabetic issues. It is, I don't know, it just irritates me. And of
Yeah.
course you lost weight, you got in better shape before you became pregnant again, a little bit anyhow. How much do you remember, if you lost significant?
So I was 250 when I birthed my baby, and I got down to 196 before I was pregnant again, and then I was about 225 when I had my son.
Well, that's a significant amount.
So, and then again though, I lost a bunch of weight. I got down to like 159,
Wow.
and then I was about 189 or so when I got pregnant again with my daughter, and then I was about 232 when I gave birth to her. So I've been
Up and down.
relatively heavy on all of my pregnancies. So
But you actually had proper glucose tolerance tests on the
yeah,
other one.
proper, yeah. And I actually had to
What-
go back for a second one time too. It came back fine, but I had to go back,
because that's what they do.
do the 3-hour one. Yeah. So I don't know.
Yeah.
When I told the in the hospital, because they were asking me after I delivered my daughter at home and I was in the hospital, they asked me, so what kind of tests they do? And I said, yeah, they gave me grape juice, and they they were just really, really upset. They said, had you been in the hospital, you'd be holding your baby right now. And
Oh, son of a gun, they did not feed you there was nothing they could do kind of. Sometimes hospitals, when they're faced with grieving families, they can do the kind of fudge the facts kind of,
they
or
were very
what happened kind of deal.
they were very matter of fact. They were like, we're sorry this happened to you. This shouldn't have happened to you. Your baby was completely healthy, because they did a whole, anatomy, or, what's the,
Coroners.
yes,
Ah.
where they did the whole thing. They checked the baby, everything, she was healthy. She was good. So they were very matter of fact. If you had the baby, in the hospital, if you had a C-section, if you came, a little bit sooner, we could have, very likely, they didn't 100%, nobody can 100%, but they said, you should have your baby right now. And they were very apologetic that happened, and it shouldn't have happened. And they were in just as much shock, and I think, they were sad for me that this happened, that, they had to deal with a home birth loss, and that they were, I don't know, they were very caring. They were good. They were, they took really good care of me, which I appreciated.